Dude, you know what I was thinking about? Like back in the day, I mean, what was better than having like a big jug of Kool-Aid? Like almost literally nothing. Like as a kid going out, you know, playing on your bike and you come inside and it's like, dude, mom made some Kool-Aid. But now looking at it today, it's like, dude, I can't have that as an adult, right? Like it's impossible.
Oh yeah. And the Kool-Aid man breaks through. Nah, seriously, man. Since you were mentioning that,
microphone.
Element has like awesome flavors, 7 awesome flavors, and I'm gonna list them all to you right now: orange, raspberry, citrus, unflavored, mango, chili, lemon habanero, and chocolate. And guess what? You guys want to try all of these?
Yeah.
Then check out their sample pack.
Yeah, you guys can get a free Element recharge pack right now at drinklmnt.com/powerproject. And obviously we're having fun here, but the flavors are incredible. And this is an awesome way for you to try out multiple flavors in case you know, maybe orange salt is your jam and you don't want to stray away from it. Well, with this sample pack, you're actually going to be able to try some of the other flavors, like another favorite, citrus salt, or sorry, citrus salt. That's what it's called. I always want to call it lime because that's what it reminds me of. Anyways, this stuff really is kind of like grown-up Kool-Aid. You like zero guilt, taste amazing. You can put it in like a big gallon jug and drink that all day long, like some awesome bodybuilders do. Or you can just, you know, put it in a shaker cup the way I do. Really, you can't go wrong. Check out the value bundles because that really is where it's at. The value is in the value bundle because you get 3 boxes and they'll send you one absolutely free. Or if you're not ready to fully commit, check out that recharge pack. Again, that's at drinklmnt.com/powerproject. All they ask is that you cover shipping. Go get over there right now.
What up, Power Project crew? This is Josh Selledge, aka Settlegate, here to introduce you to our next guest, Robert the Keto Savage Sikes. Robert Sikes is the Keto Savage. Robert is the creator and founder of KetoSavage.com and is the host of the Keto Savage podcast and YouTube channel. His YouTube channel features him vlogging about his keto lifestyle, cooking demos, and his own personal training. Robert is a lifetime natural bodybuilder and coaches athletes and everyday people to help them become more keto adapted and to live their best life. Robert is also the creator of one of our favorite snacks, the Keto Brick, a delicious keto snack that is shelf-stable, high in energy, providing calories, and perfect for those following a ketogenic diet, as well as athletes and other high performers and outdoor enthusiasts. It is the performance of brick compared to the typical snack bar. On top of that, Robert and his wife, Crystal, have also created a no oatmeal recipe that is essentially oatmeal without the oats. But that's a different story, maybe one that we'll hear on this episode of The Power Project. Please enjoy this conversation with Robert Sikes.
Like paralyzes you for a moment.
It sucks how that happens. Oh my God, yo. Dude, okay. So my dog will sometimes, he'll have a ball. Are we live?
Well, we're unlive, but we're recording.
Oh, we're recording. Okay,
yeah.
So he'll have a ball, right? And he'll want me to play some tug of war or bring it towards me. So I was sitting on the couch and I was just chilling in my shorts, and he brings it and he like puts it on like my dick area. I'm like, okay. But then he's like, he opens his mouth to like bite it again. I'm like, oh shit.
You're like, no.
He's done that multiple times where I think he almost bit my dick. And it is a very scary experience to go through.
I think pets and kids have like dick radar. Because anything they throw or anything they swing back at you, it always hits you right in the dick. And a dog, whenever it like jumps up on you, it always hits you right in the dick. Or if you're sitting down and it jumps on you, it like presses its paws all over your dick.
So that's like, God damn. That's the issue that we have. God
damn. And your dogs are probably pretty heavy.
Dude, so like the biggest one, and he's the one that jumps the most, and he will jump on you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, same thing. I'm just like, dude, like you have to be aiming directly for my junk.
It's like, you got GPS on this shit?
Yeah, like what the fuck, man?
It wants to cause you a little bit of pain.
They can smell your wee-wee, that's what it is.
They definitely can.
I need to bathe more then, I guess. Yeah. I'm just stinky.
They can smell your nuts from a mile away.
That's actually how they know when you're home.
Yeah.
There's like, smells like nuts.
I think that'd be inconvenient to like be able to smell the way that a dog could smell.
Yo, that'd be horrible.
Like that'd be like, I mean, just think like you sometimes get someone's breath or you sometimes get someone's BO. And there's all these different like things we try to have for our house to make it smell nice and shit like that. It'd probably drive you crazy.
Absolutely. He's so disrespectful when we go out. Oh my God. That's why sometimes it's hard to go out to stores.
Doesn't have good manners.
He will go up to women's butts.
Oh yeah.
All the time. He'll just be like, he's like,
just jams his face right there.
Jams his face and asses, and I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're like, hey.
They're like, oh, it's okay.
You're like, hey, buddy, you find something that you like? Well, they do say it a lot of times. A dog mimics its owner quite a bit.
I don't be doing that, man.
I've heard people say that about their some people are like, yeah, you know, they have a certain breed, and they're like, my dog is so stupid. And then someone else will like that knows about dogs are like, that breed pretty much just mimics like the owner quite a bit. I'm like, oh shit, okay. Like, I didn't know that.
Oh, God.
It is funny how like the pets will start to resemble their owners.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember on a photo shoot, but there was a lady walking like some dog, and they looked alike, and you're like, I don't want to be mean, but
no,
we were all thinking it though.
Yeah, you see that a lot. Like I don't know if people purposely get dogs that they feel like them, or dogs start looking like the owners, but you do see that in public. Like wow, they really look alike. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a not so good way.
Yeah. Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, Keto Brick.
What's up?
What's up, Keto Savage? How you doing this morning?
How y'all doing? I'm doing dandy. How are y'all?
Oh, I didn't know we had a beautiful accent going on over here. This is amazing.
Oh yeah, man. I'm from Arkansas. What'd you expect?
Andrew, can you contact our translator? Hey, man,
you're gonna need one of those for sure.
Thank you so much for sending out product to us. We appreciate what you did with the Keto Brick. Congratulations on it. I happen to love the product. I know these guys enjoy it too. Mm-hmm. What led you to make the Keto Brick? Because it's extremely unconventional. You know, you see these little protein bars, and they're trying to have 180 calories and 20 grams of protein and no carbs, and they're trying to fulfill a certain macronutrient and have very low calories. But you made a fucking brick, and the brick has 1,000 calories in it. It just seems so counterintuitive. Why are you trying to fuck everything up so much over there?
I'm a disruptor, man. I don't mess around. I just, for me, I made it during my 2017 competition prep, and I needed something to hit the macros properly, gave me the right ketogenic macronutrient ratios, and just made meal prep easy. So for me, having something that was a solid 1,000 calories, had the right profile, just made my life easier. So I kind of made it out of my own need to scratch my own itch, basically.
And then, like, when you were, it sounds like you and your wife work on this business somewhat together. Is that right?
Yeah. So I met her when I moved up to Washington State, and I was bodybuilding prior to that. She was working as a barista in the coffee stand, and I made this brick for my competition prep. Never planned on making it into a product that was sold, but we were documenting my prep on YouTube. I just started like putting content out there. And people kept messaging for, what is this thing? Where can I get it? Where can I buy it? How do I make it? And I just, kind of wrote it off. And then my mom was probably my only YouTube subscriber at the time, was like, man, you got to start making these things. People are wanting them. So Crystal dug into what it takes to have like a, health code up to date and everything. And we started diving into the physical product world, and the rest is history, man. We started making these things.
Damn, how do you make a keto brick? Because that thing is like a weapon as well. It's like, it's a literal brick.
Yeah, people we'll ship it out to like northern states when it's in the middle of the wintertime. It's a legit frozen solid brick, and they try biting into it thinking it's like a Quest bar or something. And we gotta like send out a disclaimer saying let it come to room temp before you try to eat this thing.
Right.
But there's a lot to it. I mean, it's a pretty simple process to make them, but we've been making them for a long time now. We just keep making new flavors, coming out with more, and kind of tweaking things as we go. So
you said you kind of needed a certain macronutrient requirement. Like, how did you stumble upon like the cacao butter and the combination? Like, what made you think that and go there?
Well, the macro profile was basically just my need for making the right ratios for my competition prep. I was during 2017, that was my first prep doing a ketogenic protocol. So I was doing the high fat, moderate protein, low to no carb. So it just made sense to find something in that ratio. And most like the fat bombs out there, they're going to use like a coconut oil base. So they're going to melt at room temperature. Didn't want that, obviously. Cacao butter's got a really high melting point. So that seemed like a really solid base. Plus it's got the stearic acid in there as the primary fat source. So it's, more easily absorbed and assimilated by the body.
And then people that like buy the Keto Brick, what are most people looking for as far as the amount of calories in it? Like what type of consumers generally trying to get and use the Keto Brick?
Man, it's honestly gone all over the board. You know, I made it as a natural bodybuilder, so I kind of marketed initially in that niche. I mean, all of my branding online is Keto Savage, so it's kind of like the bodybuilder powerlifting style theme. But keto itself is really popular amongst the middle-aged women demographics. There's a bunch of middle-aged women buying these bricks. Wow. They wouldn't slam a whole brick at a time like I do, but they'll cut it up into pieces. Or they'll portion it out. They'll melt them into little fat bomb molds and make little smaller portion sizes. But honestly, it's been appealing to all different kinds of demographics. A lot of people in the backpacking community or hunters, campers, they like it because it's self-stable and it's pretty dense, so it works out well for them too.
That's cool, because I never even thought about that. Like it tastes really good on its own, but I guess I'm not smart enough to figure out that shit can be used in recipes. You can put that stuff in hot coffee. It's like there's a lot of different uses for it, but I just bite into it all the time.
That's what I do. I don't mess around. I just eat a whole one a day and call it good. But yeah, people will make recipes out of it. They'll use it as a base for other things. So it's pretty versatile in that regard for sure.
When you were doing your bodybuilding prep and some of the other shows that you've done, have you done a ketogenic diet the whole way through, or like what has been your preparation? Because that's unconventional as well. Like most of the time we see people utilizing some complex carbohydrates going into a bodybuilding show.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I like my approach. I mean, when I started bodybuilding, I was a junior in high school. I was 115 pounds. I was tiny. And I was following traditional bro dieting approaches. I did, 6-7 meals a day. I'd have, the high carbs, carried Tupperware around me everywhere I went, and I would do that. And I bulked up. I did the whole dirty bulk for my first prep. I bulked up to 230, and I'm only 5'7", so I was pretty beefy, 230. And then I leaned down for my first show. I gave myself 12 weeks to do it, and I lost like 80 pounds in 12 weeks. And I just kind of really developed some negative eating disorders. Relationships with food was just not good. So from there, I knew there had to be a better way. And I'd done several preps kind of following that protocol. And then I stumbled into keto by accident when it started. Before it really was popular. I mean, there was I think, Jimmy Moore had a podcast on it at the time. And I think Tim Ferriss had Dom D'Agostino on. And that was the first place I heard about it. There wasn't really any books or literature on the topic. So I started playing around with that. I started doing John Kiefer's carb backloading protocol when it was released way back in 2014 or 15, I want to say. And it was basically keto during the day and then carbs at night, but I noticed that I felt better without the carbs. So I just kind of started phasing those out. I did carb backloading without the carbs. And that just really worked for me. I was able to perform on the gym. I had no inflammation. I was able to train more frequently. And then from there, I kind of just fine tuned it and figured out what ratios and macro manipulations work best for my body. And then 2017 was my prep. I did the, keto all the way through peak week, prep and the off season. And, I got my pro card that year, and I've since just kept it keto ever since.
I'm really curious about this because, so, a lot of guys, when they're prepping and they do very low fat towards the end of their prep, you'll get a lot of guys that start saying, yo, my libido has gone to into the gutter. Like even for myself, my libido was down. I was attracted to food more than the person I was with at the time. It was bad. And even after prep, it took a while for me to get that back and start feeling normal. Now for you, since you were doing keto and you were probably more moderate to high fat, did you have less of those effects? Because what I've noticed when people talk about that, when they do higher fat on a prep, is they don't feel all of those low fat issues that typically happen. And I think you'd have a really interesting perspective since you've prepped on, doing normal, type of prep, low fat, moderate carb, and you've prepped on keto.
It's I'm never going to go back to a traditional prep having done it this way because, when you take your calories that low, you're going to have some dip in hormone performance. That just kind of comes to the territory of natural bodybuilding. But I got blood work done pre and post throughout the entire journey, and my numbers were much more stable with the high fat. When you strip the layers back and look at it, the precursor to testosterone is cholesterol. And if you're taking a high fat ketogenic diet, you're going to have more of that by default in your system. Yeah. So my numbers did dip a little bit towards the end, but they stayed stable relatively throughout the entire prep for the most part. There was not near the downside effect. There was not that zombie effect towards the end that a lot of people struggle with, which in turn made the reverse diet much more sustainable as well. I didn't have near the repercussions that a lot of people in the natural bodybuilding world face when they're coming out of a deficit like that.
do you cut back on the amount of fat that you consume a little bit as you get to be like a month out from the show?
Yeah, I cut total calories, throughout. So my fat is titrating down, but I make protein my most manipulated variable. So this is pretty controversial within the keto space itself, but especially in traditional mainstream dieting. But I'll take my protein down very low for a very finite period of time. I mean, I don't want to be pegged as the guy that advocates low protein, because a lot of people aren't consuming enough protein. But during that last little bit, I'll take protein down pretty low. Like during my 2017 prep, I think I had my protein was down to 65 grams the last couple weeks, 65 grams a day, which is very, very low by most people's standards. But that's for a very finite period of time. I traditionally will titrate protein up, and then as I hit my protein threshold, I'll start taking both protein and fat down, so that protein ratio will be decreasing. But my fat ratio is always north of 75% of my calories, especially there towards the end.
I honestly love people like you, because you're discovering stuff that, like, Walter Longo with the fasting mimicking diet, and there's Dave Asprey, and there's other people that basically say if you pretty much only consume fat, your body barely recognizes that as a meal. And that's a little bit of what you were doing, even though it's for a short period of time, because it sounds to me like you're predominantly eating fat for that bodybuilding prep, and there was a really low amount of protein.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I kind of just, because when I started doing keto, there was not any literature out on the topic. There wasn't any podcast or media. So I just kind of, playing around and seeing what worked. And for me, having the high fat ratio helps a lot. So I'll typically start a prep, and this is where I'll start my clients at too. I'll start them with like 80% of their calories coming from fat. And then if the primary goal is to lose body fat, I'll start dropping protein. I'll start dropping fat down gradually and increasing protein to figure out what that threshold is. And then once we hit that threshold, I'll start dropping both protein and fat. Carbs are constantly low. I mean, typically I'll be at 10 or 15, sometimes 20 grams of total carbs is it. And that's total carbs, not net carbs. So that's always low. But then towards the end, like that last month, we start incorporating ketogenic refeeds, especially they're close to peak week. So we'll start bumping up calories for those refeed days. But I mean, for the most part, it's very, very contrary to what's most traditional prep protocols are suggesting.
So yeah, can you explain the reasoning for the periods of very low protein? Because most people, when they look at prep, they'd want to keep the protein high to help with maintaining muscle. So like, what does that help with? Because maybe there's something that's like being missed there, or that I'm missing there.
So in the keto space itself, there's multiple different sides of ways of looking at things. But a lot of people suggest that, hey, if you have a lot of body fat to lose, then you want to consume very minimal dietary fat, because you want your body to tap into its own stored adipose tissue. And that sounds really appealing. It makes sense at first glance. But what I've found in just experimenting over the years is that the more dietary fat you have, your body, and that's what your primary fuel source is when you're keto. It's not carbs or glucose. So if you have a pretty good ratio of dietary fat, your body's efficiency at using fat in its totality is going to be significantly enhanced. And that includes your stored fat. So when you're titrating total calories down, as you are in a prep, and fat ratio is staying high, your body becomes hyper-focused and sensitive to efficiently using fat as the primary fuel source. And a lot of people, they're going to see an increase in ketones during that time because the dietary fat is high, and they're in such a fat burning mode because of the decrease in calories. So their ketone bodies are ramping up. Like, I've measured 7 millimolar towards the end of a prep, and those are very muscle sparing. So when my calories are low in the context of the high ketone bodies, because my protein is lower, which also kind of enhances that ketone production, my ability to maintain the muscle and the lean tissue I've built up to that point is enhanced significantly, even in the context of very low dietary protein intake.
The ketones are protein sparing. They're anti-catabolic, and there's a bunch of other things that happen in the system that help you stay anti-catabolic. I was just kind of estimating that you maybe would have like 100 grams of fat, but you must have had more than that. Maybe like 200 grams of fat and then 65 grams of protein, something like that.
Yeah. So I think I'm at to reach back in memory banks here, but I want to say my total caloric intake at the very end of my 2017 prep was about 1,600 calories, I want to say, at the lowest. So yeah, I think it was, I don't know what that pencils out to be, but at 65 grams of protein there at the very end. And then, it was definitely over 100 grams of fat. Yeah,
it'd be like around 200 grams of fat. That sounds about right. That sounds accurate. And then it's really interesting. That's an interesting way to keep your calories really low.
Yeah, yeah, and in the context of those really low protein numbers, I am incorporating a weekly refeed, which is going to have a much higher protein intake, which kind of shunts any of the negative effects of the lower protein overall. So it makes it more sustainable.
Did you, when you were starting and you did keto back in 2017 for your prep, I don't know if you mentioned what spurred that, because again, like I know that there's a lot of people doing keto, but there weren't that many people doing keto in the bodybuilding space. Like that's a space where people are just like, no, that's just not a good idea. So was there anyone that you were paying attention to that was doing keto while competing and you're like, I want to try that out? Or what really got you moving in that direction at that time?
So I started keto, in 2015, I want to say 2014, 2015. I did a prep in 2012 and then a prep in 2014. And then after that's when I did that carb backloading protocol. And then from there, I just felt much better without the carbs. So pretty much from 2015 on, I've been strict keto. And then I decided that, hey, I want to try to do this with a prep as well, because at the gym I was training at the time, everybody was looking at me like I was crazy, not having the carbs, but my performance wasn't hindered at all. I was hitting PRs on a regular basis and my inflammation was down. So I'm like, well, I'm going to try and do a prep with this as well and just see what happens. And there wasn't anybody at the time that had done a prep following a ketogenic approach that I was aware of. So I just kind of started pulling levers and figured out what worked. But it wasn't really, I wasn't looking at anybody as inspiration or even, information as to how to do this. I just kind of honestly trial and error to figure out what worked for me.
Yeah. And then your off season, I'm curious about this because a lot of people, they'll do like very low carb or keto when they're prepping, but in their off season, they'll bring back a moderate amount of carbs or something. But are you also fully keto in the off season too? And how do you, because like you're trying to gain muscle, right? So how do you navigate all of that while in the context of, I want to put some muscle on?
So it's strange that the belief that you can't build muscle on a keto diet has gained as much momentum as it has, because it's just not the case. So yeah, I've been strict keto since 2015, so 6 years now, and I haven't had any issue putting on muscle. I continue to look bigger and fuller every time I lean down. So I haven't had any issues in that regard. The main thing has just been to be in a caloric surplus for a long enough period of time while implementing progressive overload with the training. So many people, they do a cut every 6 months or they lean down for the summertime. And as a natural bodybuilder, and you can attest to this too, I mean, it's just not really effective because you spend, 20 weeks, 22 weeks in a prep. That's, pretty good portion of the year right there. And then take several months to reverse back to maintenance. And then to have any ample time in a surplus to build any lean tissue, you got to take an off season that's oftentimes, 2 years long. So if you're doing that and you're checking all those boxes, then you can have you could have a well-formulated ketogenic diet. And as long as you're implementing that progressive overload, you're going to see increase in muscle tissue.
You said that you've been on a keto diet for the last 6 years. Can you define that for us? What's that mean to you? Because I know there's a little wiggle room within the keto diet for everybody.
There's not a whole lot of wiggle room by my definition. I mean, I stay strict keto. I don't do the carb ups. I don't do the cyclical or the targeted keto. I mean, my definition of keto is basically one in which, everything that I consume in a day-to-day basis is designed to optimize my ketogenic performance. So there's not, like, a lot of people view keto as simply being a metabolic state, which is true by the purest definition of the word. But with that comes a lot of, shades of gray, because you can have, some people, especially athletes, can take in more carbs while still being in a metabolically keto state. However, I'm not eating rice because I can get away with it. I'm not eating rice simply because it's not conducive to being the best ketogenic athlete I can be. I mean, like most things in life, the more you practice it, the more consistently you're doing it, the better your body or mind's going to be able to get at it. So for me, I've been able to just adopt that philosophy towards my nutrition.
About like sugar alcohols and things like that. You have any foods like that? You have any keto treats? I mean, I know you got your Keto Brick, but that my understanding is that doesn't have sugar alcohols in it and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, there's no sugar alcohols in the brick, just stevia and monk fruit, depending on the flavor. I'll incorporate some, sugar alcohols on occasion. That's not as concerning to me. I try and steer clear of it on the most part. But like, for instance, special occasions, I'll have like a keto cheesecake or something. Like, we made keto cheesecake for my wedding. I'll have that and not think twice about it. But I'll not have a regular cheesecake. I'll have a legitimate keto cheesecake. That way I'm not kind of blurring the lines.
Now, as far as protein's concerned in the off season, how does that change for you? Because again, like when it comes to people that are strict, like individuals that are really strict keto, they keep their protein levels at a certain place. It's fairly low. Do you also do that too, even in the off season when you're trying to gain? How does that look?
I'll increase everything. I'll increase, well, not carbs. I'll increase, protein and fat macros. A lot of people, when they're in a surplus, they will see a significant dip in ketone production because, by definition, I mean, ketones are kind of there for being in a sense of scarcity. When you're in a surplus, you're going to have a downregulation of your ketone bodies in your blood. However, if my protein and fat is where I'm getting my fuel and not the carbs, I'm not worried about that indicating that I'm any less fat adapted. I'm just simply not producing as much, ketone bodies. So my protein, I mean, in the off season, like I am right now, I think my protein's probably up around, 200 grams, sometimes 225 grams, and I'm weighing in at about, 180 right now. So still pretty solid protein intake. Now my ketones aren't that high, but I'm fine with that because I'm not taking in carbs and I feel great. So I'm still fat adapted.
What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about keto? Because we have a lot of people in the flexible dieting community and a lot of people in other communities that are like, keto's, bullshit. It doesn't work. Like, what do you think? To me, it's usually just education. Maybe somebody's not that educated on it, but what do you think is maybe some of the bigger misconceptions out there about a ketogenic diet?
I think a lot of people view it. I mean, mainstream media doesn't do us any favors when it comes to how we need to view things. I mean, they're always painting keto as the diet to lose a quick 10 pounds. Of course, it's all just water weight when you're losing it that fast anyways. I think it needs to be painted into the light of more of a lifestyle protocol. Like I said, I've been doing it for 6 years now. And when you view it that way, it becomes much more sustainable and you don't look for ways to get out of it. And nowadays, with as popular as keto's been, I mean, there's like a keto alternative for everything you could possibly desire. So I'm not really worried about not having options. People are worried about not having options. There's options everywhere. People just like making excuses.
What about, like flexible dieters or just anybody that tracks macros? They'll tell you often it's calories in, calories out. There's no magic in keto or just in a diet period. So when they see a ketogenic diet, they're like, well, it's a lot of fat. Fat accounts for a lot of calories. Therefore, it's probably not going to work for everybody because there is no magic in just a high fat diet. But I mean, man, you're having like some amazing success. Like your physique's you look great. So what do you have like to say to those people that kind of like they want to crap on the ketogenic diet because they're like, no, it's just calories in, calories out?
So it's interesting because the calorie, equation questions a really hot topic in the keto space too. And you've got people that are suggesting that it's all hormone based and calories don't matter within the keto space. And I've been, screaming from the rooftops from the top from day one that calories absolutely matter. I mean, that's just sheer ignorance on their part, in my opinion. Now, hormones matter too. And I do feel like if you've got a properly implemented ketogenic diet, your hormones are going to be much more stable. As I kind of illustrated when I did my prep and my testosterone didn't tank like it had in previous years with a traditional, flexible dieting approach. The quality of the food you're consuming should be placed at a paramount. I mean, you should really focus on that. And there is definitely dirty keto in which people are just eating all kinds of shit and getting away with it. But I encourage people to really focus and prioritize the quality of their nutrition. And if you're doing that with a well-implemented ketogenic diet and you are taking calories into consideration, like when I'm doing a cut, I'm constantly taking calories into consideration. I'm constantly dropping calories. I wouldn't be able to just say it's all hormone and not manipulate my macros and expect to get as lean as I do during a prep. So calories absolutely count, and the flexible dieting community has a lot of good insight to offer in that. I feel like if people just put their heads together on both sides and join forces, we'd probably make a lot more progress as opposed to just hitting our head against the wall.
You made it really simple when you were talking about bulking on a ketogenic diet, because it's like, I mean, it's with any type of diet where you're trying to bulk, you have to be in a caloric surplus and you have to train with progressive overload over time, right? I know that a lot of individuals who are trying to like be low carb or maybe be keto while doing this are curious about not like specific macros or anything like that, but maybe the protocols for going about it. Because I would assume like a guy that's taking out carbs and that's going to try this out, they'll be initially concerned because maybe they're not feeling as much of a pump when they're working out. Maybe they're feeling a little bit drained. So there's obviously an adaptation period. But if you were to guide somebody through this process of trying to bulk on extremely low carb or keto, what would be some of the big things that they should take into account while doing this so that their performance doesn't tank, so that they can actually make progress doing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when you're in a surplus, your ability to absorb the nutrients you're consuming is absolutely paramount. So if you're consuming a lot of processed food and you're eating right before you go to sleep and you're breaking all the rules in that regard, your body's not going to fully be able to tap into and assimilate the food that you are eating. You're going to get some GI distress. You're not going to feel optimal, and you're going to probably gravitate towards more of a maintenance intake. And carbs are easier to process and more quickly process than fat. So once you become fat adapted, and there's a big, once you become, statement there, because it doesn't take just 24 hours to become fat adapted. You can start producing ketones in a short amount of time, but it takes a long time to truly tap into that and become efficient at it. So once you do that, and through that, you kind of figure out you need to increase your electrolyte intake, your sodium, your potassium. That's where the pump's going to come from. So if you're taking in the proper macronutrient ratio and your electrolytes are in check and you're taking in enough water, you're not going to have any issues getting a pump. I mean, the best pumps I've ever had have been on a ketogenic diet. So that shouldn't be a concern there. The main thing is finding foods that your body can tolerate well at a surplus, and it's not giving you any kind of digestive upset. And if you go, strictly from eating a heavily processed carbohydrate dependent diet to a surplus in fats, you're probably going to have a lag time there in your body being able to assimilate that fat. So maybe starting at more of a deficit or maintenance and then kind of titrating calories up as you become fat adapted is going to work better for most people.
You said earlier, 80 pounds, you lost 80 pounds in like 12 weeks.
That wasn't good. Don't recommend it.
Yeah. What did you learn from that experience, and what do you try to share with people that are really eager to lose weight that you may help out?
I mean, I did everything wrong when I did that first prep. That was my first prep. I was in I was a sophomore in college, I believe. And I was eating, 6-7 meals a day. I didn't give myself enough time to do a cut. And I had this weird, delusional outlook towards how lean I was to begin. I mean, I was 230 pounds, like I said, at 5'7". I thought I was jacked. And the reality was I was just fat. I was strong, but I wasn't healthy. And when I started cutting down, I gave myself 12 weeks to do it because that's what all the bodybuilding magazines said, 12-week cut protocol. So I'm going through this and I'm just cutting calories, training like a madman, 3 hours a day. I'd spend all my time on the damn Stairmaster machine. And I was really struggling with obsessive compulsive disorder at that time, OCD. And it was like it was dark. I was depressed for sure. And I would go to the gym, sleep deprived, hadn't studied for exams, and just trying to make the most of life. And this OCD would start, talking in my mind, and I'd have all this negative, visualization going on in the gym. And I just killed myself. I cut down calories, probably sub 1,000 at several points throughout the process. And I lost all that weight, and I got super shredded and actually won my division in that show. But then because of that, we went out to eat that night, celebratory meal after a show, went out to Red Lobster, and I ate freaking everything. I ate everything in a big way. I woke up the next day 24 pounds heavier, looked in the mirror, flipped shit. And I'm like, man, what did I just do? I just threw away the last 12 weeks of my life for nothing. And that's when I really started spiraling out of control downhill with the eating disorders. And that's when I knew something had to change. Like that kind of plagued me for several years thereafter, but that was really and truly the catalyst as to me finding a more sustainable approach to nutrition.
You mentioned eating disorders. I mean, okay, so from there, what type of eating disorders formed? And what is it that how did you get out of that?
Yeah. So when I first did that, when I went from being really lean or really fat to really lean, that was the first time in my life where I committed myself wholeheartedly to a cause and saw massive success with it. Like I'd never done a show before. That was kind of like my identity was fitness at the time. And I poured myself into it, and it worked. I looked the part. I got the competition trophy. I did everything I set out to do. But then once I totally threw it all away, seemingly with that cheat meal, and then put on all that water weight, like it really screwed with my head, and I kind of lost my identity. And for me, the eating disorders was kind of a combination of just constantly binging and purging. And like after that specific day, I felt so poorly, both mentally and physically, that I just pretty much went on a 3-day fast, and all I had was 6 cans of tuna during that time. And I wasn't fat adapted, so it was just not healthy, And then after that, I'm like, okay, I've lost all the water weight, so now I can eat again. I'm super hungry, so I'd go and binge again. It just became this negative feedback loop of where I'm binging and purging. And that went on for years, honestly. And nobody, like, I didn't know anybody in the bodybuilding space at the time. So, like, my parents didn't have a clue what I was talking about. Like, you can't tell your dad, who's never struggled with eating disorders, that I'm struggling with eating disorders, and him expect to know what I'm talking about. So I didn't have anybody to kind of turn to. So I just started playing around with different protocol. That's why I was stumbled upon the carb backloading by John Kiefer that seemed to work really well, because it played into that, you know, just basically binge all you want at the end of the day with those high glycemic index carbs. And if you structure it like he suggested, you kind of mitigate the adverse effects. So that kind of worked well with where I was at that chapter in my life. But I knew that in itself wasn't really optimal from a health standpoint, at least not for me. So that's kind of when I started playing around with keto. And that, I think it kind of worked from a psychological effect, in that I was excited about something new and different that seemed to be, you know, getting me to the next day. But also from a physical standpoint, because I do feel like it provided some stabilization in my hormones. I wasn't having the crazy blood sugar spikes and insulin spikes as a result of all the heavily processed carbohydrates. So it allowed me to kind of get enough ahead and make some momentum to see things differently and make a more sustainable approach.
You mentioned being depressed, you know, while you're going to the gym and losing weight and doing all these things. Do you think that depression kind of settled in because you were just going way too hard and way too fast towards your goal, and there was like maybe too much restriction? There was really not, like, pulled all the joy. Like, losing weight can be like joyful, it can be fun. It's like, oh, I'm heading towards my goal, this feels great, just like gaining strength. In your case, was it just a fact that you were maybe too restricted?
Yeah, the restriction definitely played a part for sure. But like, simultaneously as all this was going on, you know, like, I was going to school for business, and I had always aspired to be a successful entrepreneur and a businessman. And I hadn't seen any success in that part of my life yet. And, you know, I'd tried all different kinds of business endeavors, and nothing panned out. At one point, I dug myself down to $250,000 in debt, had all kinds of credit card debt, and I was just in a super dark place in that regard too. So that, combined with the fact that I was just, you know, threw away the one identity I had with the fitness space, just really kind of put me over the edge. And that's what made it a very dark place for me. So crawling out of that hill, out of that, you know, hole was difficult, but it kind of built the foundations to where I am now. And I wouldn't have done anything different if I could.
In terms of dirty keto, because I'm curious about this, you know, a lot of people, when they think about flexible dieting, you know what dirty flexible dieting is, because you see it all over the place with Instagram. People like to fit these foods in, and it's not, you know, you shouldn't be doing that. But when people are thinking about dirty keto, they might not even know what that is or what foods are dirty, you know, like eating a bunch of bacon. That's keto, right? So like, what does dirty keto look like?
So dirty keto is basically, it's kind of similar to flexible dieting in that all in like 100% of the emphasis is placed on the macronutrient profile. So like, you know, it can have the right macros from a fat standpoint, very minimal carbs. So, I mean, you can go to McDonald's and get the burgers without the bun, but it's not really taking into account the quality of that beef. It's not really taking into account what types of oils or fats that was cooked in. It's not taking into account any of the polyunsaturated fats or anything like that, which is just not optimal. Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot basically to try and hit the macros properly, but you're not putting any emphasis on the quality of the foods you're consuming. So for me, you know, placing that emphasis on, you know, where the food's sourced, and there's like, you know, keto 1.0 to keto 5.0, depends on how deep you want to go down the rabbit hole. But, you know, in a perfect world, you're getting some organ meats in, you're getting some, you're eating kind of more of a nose tail approach. You're focusing on the sourcing of those foods. You're cooking it in foods that are, you know, represent the ketogenic diet well and aren't going to be plaguing you with a bunch of polyunsaturated fats. It takes a little bit more work, and it's a little bit more expensive to do that. And for some people that are just, you know, addicted to carbs, that's probably not where they want to start. You know, maybe dirty keto for them to start, it makes a lot more sense. It kind of bridges the gap and is a good stepping stone, so to speak. But it's all just a matter of how far you want to take things.
Do you personally eat vegetables or fruit?
I don't eat fruit. I'll occasionally have, I mean, I don't look, I mean, people eat berries, like my wife Crystal stuffs some berries from time to time. I do eat vegetables on occasion. We're going to start the whole homesteading chapter of our life here soon. We'll start growing our own vegetables and all that good jazz. Cool. So I'll probably eat more vegetables then, but I personally don't crave a ton of vegetables. I don't think you're missing out a ton in life by not having a bunch of vegetables if you got everything else properly implemented. You know, you get multiple different trains of thought in that regard. You have some people saying you have to have, you know, 8 cups of veggies a day. You got some people saying just strict carnivore, veggies are, the plague. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, if I'm not going to frown upon people that are eating a salad, I'll eat one on occasion and not think twice about it, but I don't feel like it's necessarily, improving my performance by any means.
For just like the everyday person that is going to hop on the ketogenic diet, they'll probably do some research and then they'll see that it's high fat, low protein, low carbs. But should a person go out of their way to try to limit their protein intake?
Generally speaking, no. There's some people that do a super high protein version of keto and they'll have significantly more protein than fat. And I would caution against that. Of course, it all kind of depends on what their overall caloric intake is. People need to be metabolically sound and have a good caloric baseline to begin with. Some people that are chronically under eating in the first place, they're trying to keep their protein down even lower. That's not really a good place to go. But for an average person that's healthy, has a good, healthy functioning metabolism, then they don't need to necessarily concern themselves with under consuming protein. I mean, like I said, I'm consuming 200 grams of protein easy right now, and I weigh less than 200 pounds. So a lot of people, that's a pretty healthy protein intake, even on traditional dieting protocol. So you don't want to steer clear of eating enough protein. But honestly, the best way to do it is just kind of trial and error, self-experimentation, figure out what ratios make them feel optimal. It does stand to reason that if you're taking a pretty high fat ratio, your body's going to become more efficient at using fat, which may kind of streamline the process of getting fat adapted in the first place. So maybe having a lower protein in the beginning and then titrating that up to figure out what ratio you feel best at would be good. But yeah, I definitely caution people against under consuming protein.
You mentioned earlier the binging and purging thing. And I'm curious, first off, like what kind of foods did you binge on? But then also, did you find that, when you switched to keto and when you obviously like got better food choices into your diet, do you still ever feel those cravings that you felt before, or did your diet change help you out with those types of cravings?
Yeah. So as far as when I was binging and purging, man, there's a couple different, bragging rights, I guess, but I'm not really proud of them. I walked into IHOP one day and I ordered one of every single thing on the menu, and I ate it all.
Nice.
My IHOP bill was pretty staggering. I got one. I mean, they make lots of different pancakes at IHOP, and I had every single one of them. So I don't recommend that. And it's crazy because I'd put down this food. I mean, you've done press before. You know what it's like to totally destroy your leptin and ghrelin hormones and have no concept of satiety.
The funny thing is, if you did that in Arkansas and ordered, one of everything on the menu, the guy before you probably did the same thing.
Man, these Arkansas jokes coming in hot today.
Yeah, not bad, right? Not bad. You didn't know I was a comedian on the side.
Shoot, yeah, man. But yeah, so it was just obviously not healthy, not sustainable, not something I would recommend for anybody. Nowadays, like I'll do a prep and my leptin and ghrelin will be a little skewed from that because I'll be coming out of a deficit, and I'll have cravings, but not necessarily for carbs at all. Like I'll never crave carbs. I'll never binge on carbs. But I'll binge on, or not really binge on. I just know that I need to kind of like rein it in a little bit. I've got a lot more control now post prep, and keto probably has a massive part in that. But honestly, just simply having gone through several preps now and just gaining more perspective as a bodybuilder has helped a lot with that as well. I mean, how terrible you feel if you totally go off the rails. So you want to mitigate that going forward, and you kind of have more self-control, more self-discipline. So that's been super healthy. But yeah, I do think not having the crazy blood sugar spikes and insulin spikes has helped make that much more sustainable. And I don't really crave, like we were going grocery shopping the other day. We walked right through the bakery aisle, and I used to not allow myself to walk through the bakery aisle because it was just too tempting. Now, it does nothing for me. Like I don't care. I'm not smelling the roses. I'm not smelling the pies and everything and reaching for them. Like it doesn't do anything for me.
Over here, like I heard you talk about when you're bulking, right? On keto, electrolytes make it so much easier to get a pump. And like we do a lot of fasting here, and electrolytes were the game changer for me in terms of my performance when I'm on the mats in the gym. Like I don't need a lot of carbohydrates like I used to think I did. So electrolytes are obviously a tool that are very, very, very beneficial. But what other tools do you use that you find like, hey, if people add this into their protocol as far as keto is concerned, their protocol as far as fasting is concerned, it could be that thing that really shifts the way that they're able to perform. Is there anything else that you use that you think people would be able to get something from?
From a fasting standpoint, mainly there's the hydration and the electrolytes. If you've got that, the longest fast I've ever done is 5.5 days. Ooh. And I was doing electrolytes then, and I was training throughout that entire 5.5 days, and I was actually hitting PRs throughout that entire time. And it was all just, proper hydration and electrolytes. The some of the bouillon cubes, like the salt bouillon cubes, is kind of nice because you can put that in some water, and it's like you're drinking a broth, but there's not really caloric intake there, so it kind of tricks your mind in that regard. So that's been kind of helpful from a fasting standpoint. But from like a building standpoint, I mean, I may be a little biased and take my hat off to the Keto Brick there, but getting 1,000 calories is a little bit easy when you got a brick in your hand. So yeah, I mean, just honestly finding foods that your body responds well to, and not creating any GI distress. Like right now, I'm at about 3,500, 3,600 calories a day, which is pretty good intake for me. And I'm to the point where it's like I don't look forward to the meals because I'm just full. So I've been doing a lot of like super full fat yogurts, and I'll put like a collagen protein powder or something there. I don't ever really use protein powders unless I'm at this point in a building phase where it's just I need something easy to get the calories in. So I'll do that mixed in with the yogurt, and that's a pretty good way to get the calories in. It doesn't really cause any GI distress for me.
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Piedmontese Beef. Nsima, can you tell me what you had for dinner last night?
You know what? I'm going to definitely tell you, and you're going to enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. But I want to quickly mention the holidays are coming. So Piedmontese is a really awesome company that if you have a company that has maybe 20 to 500 employees, what better gift to give them than the gift of Piedmontese beef?
Nice.
Like Piedmontese, they partner with companies and they make it easy to help give your employees really healthy meat options as a gift. So check that out. Now, in terms of what I had for dinner, certain people really think that ground beef is like the most, I guess, boring type of beef. But the thing about the Piedmontese 8515 is that it's just so good. So I legit just made that up, had some cheese, ate the whole pack. It was amazing. I can never go wrong with any cut of beef, or especially the ground beef that comes from Piedmontese.
For more information, please head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code PowerProject for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping.
Can you explain a little bit of what keto does? Like what does it do when we diminish the amount of carbohydrates and we start to have a more balanced insulin and glucose levels, and we bring the fats up, and we get, and we engage in a keto diet for a while? What is it actually doing for us?
Yeah, I mean, at the basic, foundational sense of the word, you're basically changing your body's primary fuel source from carbs and glucose to fat and ketones. So like typically people would have a high fat, high carb, high sugar diet, and they'll have all kinds of crazy numbers because they've got all this fat circulating in their bloodstream, but their body doesn't know what to do with it. When you switch over to keto, your body knows exactly what to do with it. So you're just much more efficient at using the fat you consume and also using your stored body fat. So for me, some tangible, differences that I noticed right off the bat was that you flush out a lot of water weight, first of all, so you don't have that super thick subcutaneous layer of fluffiness to your skin, which is a plus. I mean, my skin is much thinner, which really is appealing on show day, peak week, because you want that really thin look. But you also just have less water retention in general. And then your inflammation goes down. Like my ability to squat more frequently since going keto has been a pretty tangible difference. And the biggest one's probably honestly my mental acuity and just energy throughout the day. Like I'll fast throughout the morning hours. I'll have much more productivity because I'm not a slave to having to eat every couple of hours. I don't think about food throughout the day. I just get work done. And then when it's time to eat, I eat a big old steak or something like that and call it good. So just honestly, more productivity throughout the day has been the most tangible difference that I've seen from it.
And then, you're mentioning right now that you're bulking, you're not, you got to eat even though you're not feeling hungry. So for a lot of guys that are trying to put on muscle or that are trying to bulk, because you keep it, a pretty good body composition as you're bulking. How important do you think that is? Because a lot of guys aren't willing to like eat. Well, some people are willing to stuff their face, but eating every single day and not really wanting to eat because you're not actually that hungry. Is that common for you, or is it just like certain times during the bulking period that happens?
It's interesting, man. I'd be curious to get your take on this too. But it's like, when you're doing a prep, for instance, when you're in a deficit, you've got to push points past that point of discomfort. Like you're hungry and you got to just have the discipline to keep going even when you're hungry in order to get that freakishly level of leanness that you can't. I mean, that's not a natural level of leanness. You have to push past that discomfort. And it stands to reason in my mind that the same would be true in a building phase. Like if you're just gravitating towards maintenance, then you're probably not going to see as much lean mass gain as you could potentially see. Yeah. Whereas I'm not suggesting people just like force feed themselves and become slobs, but I mean, it stands to reason there's going to be a little bit of discomfort on the opposite end of the spectrum as well. So getting those calories in, even when you don't necessarily want it, is going to be a great way to ensure that you're not leaving anything on the table. So I feel like that is important.
Mm-hmm. No, I'd agree too. Like when I was bulking, I ended up getting up to like 276, 277. It was work to eat, but also I don't think that I was doing it I wouldn't eat a crazy amount of bad food, but I would have foods that made it easy. So your Keto Brick was my Ben & Jerry's, right? Had a lot of calories. I could shove that in real quick. And it's like, I had to do a lot of that because I couldn't eat all of it from whole food. There was a lot of just uncomfortable eating, but I also didn't like the way I felt. So yeah, I like the way you're doing it more.
And there's a lot of people, don't get me wrong, that they bulk up. Like my first prep, when I bulked up to 230, I was delusional in thinking that I had to get that big in order to put on as much lean mass as possible. Yeah. And yeah, you get different leverage points. Like when you're super heavy, you can move some more weight in certain regards. But like at the end of the day, I feel like being sustainable and being healthy overall is so key. And like for me now, I'm like I said, eating 3,600 calories probably, and I'm probably at about 15-16% body fat right now. But I still have cuts in my quads. I still have all my visible abs. I mean, I still have vascularity. Like I still feel good. And then when I lean down, I'll get down to sub 5% body fat. But it's sustainable for me all the way through. Like at no point during the cutting or building phase do I feel like I'm on the verge of jumping off a cliff. And I feel like that's been a huge thing for me because, in the past when I would get sloppy big in the off season, it's like you have to work so hard to lose that body fat that you start cutting into your lean tissue quite a bit in order to make, weight or get lean enough to be competitive on stage. Whereas with keto, especially, and you probably just without keto too, but for me, it's really worked with keto is that I don't put on near as much just unnecessary fat in the off season. So when I lean down, it's not near as just drastic.
You mentioned earlier having 7 millimolars of ketones, and do you track stuff pretty regularly? And do you suggest for some people that maybe haven't had success before on a ketogenic diet to even like I guess quote unquote like chase ketones, or is it important to like register like a high amount of ketones on one of these ketone meter things?
You don't want to be a slave to it. A lot of people, it's kind of similar to the scale, like people become a slave to the scale, and that's their make or break as to what they measure success on. And that's not good to do with the scale. It's not good to do with ketone readings. But similar to the scale, you can use it as a tool in your arsenal to kind of figure out what your body's doing and why. So I'll use the ketone readings a lot and the glucose readings a lot when I'm titrating protein up, for instance, in a prep to see where that protein threshold is. Because as my protein goes higher, my ketones will dip a little bit more and my glucose starts to rise. So I kind of figure out where that tipping point for me is. But to just simply say, okay, I've got high ketones, I'm doing this right, everything else is a wash, is not really a good way to look at it. And it's kind of, it just defeats the purpose of it. I'm all for treating a prep or treating a building phase or just life in general, treating it like a scientific experiment in the sense that I want to figure out, what my body's doing, what variables I can manipulate, what levers I can pull to really optimize for my goal. But, having that type of analytical outlook on it is not the most sustainable thing for a lot of people. So a lot of people would benefit from more of an intuitive approach, but it's good to have that knowledge kind of as a foundational baseline before they just go full on intuitive.
Now, actually, speaking on the whole idea of being intuitive, do you currently every day, do you track and make sure that you're hitting that caloric goal? Like, do you use a scale with everything you're doing currently as you're bulking? Or do you mix in intuitive eating along with that since you've tracked for so long?
I'm a lot more lax in the off season when it comes to, I know that I'm hitting that, north of 3,500 calories on a daily basis just because I've tracked for so long and know what food I'm consuming is. When I'm in a prep, I track everything. I meal prep everything. I leave nothing to chance when I'm in a prep. Yeah. In a bulking phase, I'm a lot more lax with it because it makes it more sustainable. That's another thing too. Like a lot of people, they'll never go all in on any one thing. So they're always kind of, half-assing everything, and then they never really see the goal. But for me, having like a super strict cutting protocol is much more sustainable because I'm coming out of a period of a much more lax building protocol from a tracking standpoint. So it makes being super regimented with tracking during a deficit much, much easier because it's a finite period of my life.
It gets you prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
What about cooking? You know, I think this is like a hidden attribute for some people that have successfully lost weight. I mean, I'm sure there's ways of doing it without cooking, but it seems like most of the people that I know that are able to lose weight and keep it off, they end up figuring out good ways to cook food in ways that they really enjoy. So for yourself, has that changed a lot too? Have you kind of learned how to prepare stuff a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty boring in the kitchen, honestly. Like, I've got a recipe section on the website that we're revamping, but I like keeping things super simple. Like, I'm a man of simple taste. So I got a Traeger grill that does a pretty mean reverse sear. I'll throw some steaks on there and do that, and that's a pretty good way to check the boxes there. Crystal is more so the chef of the family. I cook all the meats, she'll cook everything else. So she uses all the fancy cooking techniques and the vegetables. And anytime we do a baked keto good, she does that. With me, it's honestly keeping it pretty simple. I'll do like the ground beef, I'll do the steaks, I'll do things of that nature. I'll get a little bit more explorative with like barbecue and stuff like that. But I'm not a chef by any stretch of the imagination. Probably
before you hopped into this diet, though, you probably maybe just didn't really even know how to cook a steak that well. Like I think it's very problematic for people because they think that they have to have foods that don't taste that good when they're on a diet. How do the foods taste that you eat on a daily basis on a scale of 1 to 10? Like how much do you enjoy them?
Oh, I freaking love them. I mean, and your palate changes too. Yeah. Like your palate changes when you become keto as well. I mean, like the first time y'all probably had a brick before you really become fat adapted, this is not sweet at all. It's kind of gross, but your palate changes as you get more fat adapted. So for me, like I used to, like when I started, I was making all the keto treats. I was making, I was going keto recipe books are a dime a dozen. I'd make all the different recipes. Nowadays, it's just like, I know what I like. I stick to what I like. I know it fuels me well. I know my body tolerates it well. So I don't really need as much variety.
Some changes actually that I'm curious about yourself is I want to know if you've noticed this with yourself and maybe with other people. Maybe the first time you did your prep, right? Did you have lines in your legs? Because what I've noticed is that when people prep after prep after prep, their body composition changes and gets more even. And I want when they gain body fat back. So you see a lot of bodybuilders that are deep in, and when they're 15, 16% body fat like yourself, they still have abs and they still have lines in their legs and they still look like they're really good shape. And I'm thinking that's because of all the cutting and bulking and the reorganizing of fat when they gain it back. Did you notice that with yourself?
Yeah, so my first show, I stepped on stage at I think 153, and that's when I had gone sub 1,000 calories. So I was pretty flat, and once I started really flexing on stage, everything started popping, and the graininess and the vascularity was there. But I was super flat in the beginning, and I probably lost a lot of that definition. I definitely lost a lot of that definition as I bulked up. Now, especially since, being keto for the 6 years and a half or so, I don't hold as much water weight like I was saying earlier. So I'm got more definition just kind of, throughout the day and day. But yeah, I think you're 100% right in that, as you cycle through these building and cutting phases, you have more muscle maturity. The fat distribution is placed a little bit more efficiently throughout the whole body. Typical males, I mean, you get more fat in your ass and in your lower abdomen and lower back and area. But yeah, I mean, I still have the abs and the vascularity and everything throughout most of my body. And I'm at a good, healthy body fat percentage that I feel like, it's sustainable. I don't feel super sloppy. All my clothes still fit. Like before, I'd had a freaking cutting wardrobe and a bulking wardrobe, which is just inefficient. Now I've got all my clothes fit year round, which is a plus.
What got you into bodybuilding anyway, when you started?
Man, I was 115 pounds when I was a junior in high school, and I lacked confidence. I lacked, any self-identity or self-worth. And my uncle at the time, he's still my uncle now, obviously, but he was big into football. He ran track, and he kind of was the more fit person in the family. Nobody else in the family worked out. And he was more outgoing. He was just more, boisterous and just more fun loving. And I kind of wanted to emulate that. So he had a bunch of dumbbells and everything, and he showed me how to use dumbbells and how to do a dumbbell curl, stuff like that. And then I just started going down the rabbit hole of bodybuilding as a sport. Started watching all the YouTube videos. I never had a coach or anything. I'd watch YouTube videos of how to do these certain movements, and we live way out in the country when I was in high school, and I didn't have access to a gym. I didn't have a vehicle to get me to a gym that was reliable enough to get me there. So I made all these weights out of pieces of steel and tractor equipment that we had laying around the shop. And I was using what I could find. I did that for the first year and a half of working out. So that's what I was built on as a foundational base. And then since then, I just fell in love with the sport.
It's pretty cool. What's the deal with your oatless oatmeal?
Oatless oatmeal. So the note meal, man, you like go on the website and see that? I hadn't made that in a long time. So yeah, that's just basically made with flax and chia seeds. It kind of, it's pretty good. Like people, when you go keto and you forego all the carbs and the textures that carbs provide, I love meat, but I'm not a carnivore because eventually I want something different texture-wise than just carnivore provides. The note meal is kind of like it's an interesting texture you're not going to get from meat. It kind of satisfies that itch for something different. It's mostly fiber. So like a lot of people will be constipated when they first start keto. They don't have their electrolytes in check. They're not hydrated enough. So that's a good way to get things moving too.
Well, I really want to know when you mentioned that, you fell into some depression and then you were also $250,000 in debt. How did you get there and how did you get out?
All right. So when I was in college, I went to school for business finance. Thought I was going to be like on the stock market or Wolf of Wall Street or something. And that didn't really pan out. After I graduated college, I got a job in the railroad. I was a train master, so basically entry-level manager at the railroad at Burlington Northern Santa Fe. They had about 6 months worth of training, and then they stationed me up in Washington State, up in Spokane, Washington. And, I was making pretty good money with them, fresh out of college, making six figures. I felt on top of the world. My folks were proud of me. My family was, looking to me saying I'm doing things right. But it wasn't fulfilling. Like it wasn't me owning my own company. It wasn't me being a businessman that I aspired to be. So I was continually trying to make something else out of that. I started getting into real estate. I tried to build businesses kind of as a side hustle while I was doing the railroad thing. I bought a house with the money I was making from them. You started buying nicer things. And then the railroad got word of me trying to, I think what happened was they got word of me trying to branch out and start a business or get into real estate or do something as a side hustle. And they didn't really like that much. So they gave me a promotion to go to Gillette, Wyoming, as a terminal train master there. And, it was a promotion. It would have come with an increase in salary, all that stuff. But I just got my real estate's license in Washington State. And I had just put an offer in on a fourplex. I was going to try and start building up my wealth as a real estate investor in this like small apartment complex to begin with. So I just got my real estate license there, and I just basically said, screw y'all, I'm gonna just go the entrepreneurial route. So I quit the railroad and lost a six-figure income, had the house payment still, had all the other things, lost the loan on the apartment because I was no longer, able to fund it. And then I started living off of credit cards as I tried to build up businesses and make it in real estate. That's where I got $250,000 in debt. And that's when I was super depressed from a financial standpoint. And that's basically the same time I met Crystal too. So she was the house that I bought in Washington. She was 2 blocks up the street working as a coffee barista at that stand. And I'd go there, drink coffee, met her. And she was seeing me throughout all of this crazy dark depression time, struggling with food and eating disorders. And that was just a very interesting chapter in my life because, I met her who became my wife, started the business, started doing keto, and basically started creating something that I could, put my flag in the ground. So this is who I am. This is what I stand for. So how I climbed out of that was basically, I asked myself, I had all these failed business attempts and I'm like, who am I in life? I walked out in the woods, watched sunset go down, and just started asking myself these really probing questions. And I asked myself, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? And how can I add the most value in the world? And at the time I was reading Gary Vaynerchuk's book on Crush It. I don't know if you all read that, but it's a damn good book. And he was all about, build a career path around the things that you enjoy doing, because then you would stick to it even on the days you're not making any money. So I'm like, okay, I love bodybuilding, love natural bodybuilding. I love keto. And I feel like I can offer some value in that because there's nothing around that right now. I mean, keto's a thing, but it's not really a popular thing. So I just started hustling content creation. I started putting out YouTube videos, podcast videos, or audio. Didn't have a clue what I was doing with Instagram. I started just throwing stuff out there, and that started gaining some traction. traction. And then I was in the right place at the right time because 2017 hit, and that's when keto blew up and people started finding me, and I started doing online coaching. And then from there, the Keto Brick became a thing. So the rest is history.
It's an awesome story. I often tell people the greatest person you're ever going to interview is yourself. But I think sometimes people don't come to that realization that how important that is to kind of investigate who you are, where do you want to go, what are the things you're good at, and just simply like evaluate, what am I pretty good at? What do I enjoy? What do I like? And then just stick with that. Try to figure out a way to turn that into something. It might take a while. You may have to pursue something else while you're doing that because you may need to figure out a way to make a living. So it can be very difficult and challenging, but that's great that you're able to do that. What gave you the confidence to be a person who's speaking on YouTube? Because that's not an easy thing to do, to go on social media and to talk. You were pretty successful with bodybuilding. Is that what gave you maybe some of the confidence to kind of start in the first place?
I really was not confident when I started in the first place. I remember filming my first YouTube video. I was using my cell phone as the camera, had like a black beach towel as the backdrop. And I think probably 15 or 20 different takes on that first intro video. And then I just like, man, I'm wasting my time right now trying to figure out how to, put this video out there. So I just said, I'm going to run with it and roll with the mistakes and, let it be more authentic and less edited. So I started doing that. I would spend 3 hours a day watching YouTube tutorials on how to edit a YouTube video. Then I'd spend 3 hours editing the YouTube video, and then 3 people would watch it if I was lucky. So the first few months there, I was like, man, this how am I going to climb out of this hole? But hey, it just started gaining some traction. Like I think when it comes to content creation and building a brand, so many people are so quick to, sink their teeth into it for a very short period of time before they see any traction. And for me, it's like, look, there's nowhere, I can't go any lower. I'm already super far in debt. My relationship with my girlfriend's on the rocks because I don't know who the hell I am in the first place. It can't get any worse than this. So I'm just going to, stick to this no matter what and, fight with it. And lo and behold, it worked.
I'm really curious, for yourself as you were developing your business, did you learn more from what you did in college as far as like because I think you mentioned that you majored in business, right? Did you learn more from that, or did you learn more from the education that you did after college in terms of creating a business?
Man, you already know the answer to that question. It was all after college. I didn't learn. I went to school for like finance and, stocks and option trading and commercial banking. And I think that was good because it gave me some perspective as to, what some massive corporations are doing. But for me to actually like get some momentum going in business and entrepreneurship, that all came after college for sure. Honestly, just simply, being a slave to the trial and error experimentation and figuring out what worked and what didn't, and kind of living by that ethos was what worked for me. I'd read so many business books and those were all great. They gave me perspective as well. But, like they say, the experience is you can't get experience from a book. You got to just live that. And you got to go through those, flames and figure out if you can come out swinging or not. So yeah, just honestly learning as I went with that was the main thing.
So being in that much debt, and then trying this new business venture, did you have to, because the Keto Brick, again, it sounds crazy. I'm sure people looked at it and they're like 1,000 calorie brick, like that, where am I going to fit that in my diet? Or they just didn't understand, right? Did you have to be like super patient and just be like, I'm going to trust the process? And, I know I'm already in debt, but God, like, please let this damn business work out? Or did it kind of catch on pretty quick to where, you could actually see some return on it fairly quickly?
So I was working a bunch of other side jobs while I was building the business. So the business itself wasn't really paying me anything at the beginning stages. I launched Keto Savage as a business with the coaching on July 1st, 2016. And I got a whiteboard in the other room of all the money I made month after month for the first several months. And I think it started at like $13 a month, like it was not paying the way by any means. So I was doing multiple different side jobs. I was doing remote accounting for a friend of mine. I was working the front desk at a gym. I was doing the real estate stuff still. So I was doing all these things kind of on the side, trying to, make ends meet. But the Keto Brick business and the coaching business, I think the coaching business really took off after I got the pro card, and I started getting better at putting out content. And that was kind of the right time, because that's when people started getting into keto and they were searching how to build muscle on keto, and I was popping up. So that kind of really helped with my coaching. And then the Keto Brick was pretty much a hit right off the bat, except for the fact that we couldn't scale production to meet the demand. I mean, when we started, Crystal and I were living in a little townhouse. We were living in my house in Washington, and that was before it was a business. We launched Keto Brick as a business in March of 2018. And we started out, hand mixing. We'd stay up all night. We had to drive 3 hours to use the kitchen space. Wow. We'd stay up all night making bricks by hand. We had like a production run that took us 16 hours. We made 140 bricks. And then we launched them on a Shopify store, not knowing what was going to happen. And they sold out in 3 minutes. And we were like, okay, we might be onto something here. So we drove back down, made another production run. Then we hired my cousin to come there and help. Then we hired my brother to come there and help. Then we started building this thing up from the ground organically, keeping all the production in-house, from mixing with our hands and a little fork and a measuring cup, to using a, mixer, to using a 20-quart mixer, to using a 60-quart mixer. We just kept scaling up the production process, and people really bought into the story and the backstory and just who we were and what we stood for. And they appreciated the fact that we weren't, going the co-packing route and outsourcing all the production and just handing it off to somebody else. They appreciated the fact that I would show them the behind the scenes of us staying up all night making these things by hand. They bought into the story and who we were as individuals. And I think that was where the foundation came from. And then from there, it just grew and grew and grew. And we've since invested in, we've got 3 commercial buildings now that we're making these things out of. And we just bought a massive warehouse space in Northwest Arkansas that's 2 times bigger than the 3 buildings we have now combined. And we're getting that fully renovated. It's going to have a massive gym in there. It's going to have a massive podcast studio. So that's going to be the new Compound 2.0. And we're just going to take over the world.
I love it. That's an amazing, amazing story. I remember some of the original Keto Bricks. I remember each batch tasted a little different, and I remember that not only did each batch taste different, but it depended on where you bit from. There was like maybe more of a chunk of salt over here versus over here had less salt and things like that.
Yeah, we had some mistakes for sure when we first started. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. We're learning as we go now, but it's been a wild ride for sure. I mean, when we first started, we had like these people working with us, my cousins, my brothers, and, they're pretty unreliable employees. They got lunch too. So they would come in sometimes not. Chris and I'd be working all night long. And, we just kind of refined the process. We invested in more equipment to help with the process. I mean, for a while there, we were doing we'd wrap all the bricks by hand in tinfoil. And that worked out great until the bricks got hot, because then the cacao butter would melt out and seep through the tinfoil. And then people would be ordering these bricks and they'd be like, what the hell did I just order? It looks terrible. And then we transitioned from that to this custom film where it's kind of like, it's called a flow wrapper. So it's basically packaged in a similar package that most bars are packaged in. And it's much more, solid there. So just simply learning as we go and getting better over time.
There going to be any new flavors coming out?
I was just about to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've always got something in the pipeline. We're working on a fruity flavor right now. We have never done a fruity flavor, so we're working on a fruity flavor. So that's currently in operation. We've got a savory flavor that we're working on too. I've actually made a ribeye brick that is super freaking delicious, totally shelf stable, and it's like a pemmican basically. However, the cost to produce a ribeye brick is probably going to be cost prohibitive for most people to want to buy a ribeye brick. So we're probably not going to make that mainstream.
Hey, just make them and put them out there. Be like, yeah, it's $25, bitch.
Well, if I make some, I'll send you some for sure. You give me the yay or nay on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. My favorite one, I mean, I keep going back and forth between a bunch of different ones, but the peanut butter cup one that you made more recently is my favorite. That one's awesome.
Yeah, that's the crowd favorite without a doubt. I mean, most of our initial bricks were all made using a vegetable-based protein powder, which there was reason we did that for sure. But a lot of people in the keto carnivore space, like, I'm not going to touch it if there's any vegetable powder in there at all. So they held out for a whey protein concentrate. So we've got that now. And the chocolate peanut butter cup is our lowest carb count brick. I mean, you got 1,000 calories at only 9 grams of total carbs with that whey protein. So it's pretty hard to beat. It tastes pretty damn good.
Cool. Yeah, people that are listening, this is like we were describing it. It's a brick. Look this thing up online. It's amazing, and it's for somebody that likes to like hike or somebody that likes to hunt or somebody. I can imagine, just chucking that in your backpack, it's an easy way to, you know, have some calories with you while you're doing something that's maybe kind of rigorous, and you might need some calories on your journey.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm probably biased because I make them, but I eat one every single day. I have had one every single day for the past several years, and it's only benefited my performance, so I can't complain.
I find it, I just laughed so much inside when you were talking about like people in the keto carnivore space were like, I'm not touching that vegetable protein. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, come on. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, man. Like I've been in the keto space long enough to kind of see the different hypes rise and fall.
Yeah.
But I never cease to amaze by how people within the same general genre can just be at each other's throats, which to me seems incredibly kind of productive, but it doesn't stop them nonetheless. I mean, you got the carnivores that are the high protein. You got the high fat group going at each other. You got all of them going against the vegans. I mean, it's just dangerous territory no matter what. Like, why can't we all just sit down and have a conversation?
Will the I mean, if the Ribeye Brick comes to fruition, will that have vegan protein or will that have whey protein? Because I'm just thinking it could be a meat substitute for anybody that doesn't actually want to consume actual beef.
So the Ribeye Brick was actually made without any protein powder at all. Like it's legit ribeyes.
Okay.
You know, it's
shit, nice.
Legit ribeyes.
Oh wow.
Never mind. Then it'll just
basically
be a treat.
I'll dispel some trade secrets here. So basically, the Ribeye Brick was made with one of my good friends who's a former client of mine. He makes his brand's called Keto Explorer, and he makes these. It's not dehydrated; it's freeze dried meat. It's absolutely delicious. I use it when I'm camping a lot. Like most of the jerkies and stuff out there, they're great, but there's not any fat in them. Whereas this stuff retains a lot of the fat content, but it doesn't spoil. So I basically ground a whole bunch of those up and then bound it to a bacon grease and then made like this pemmican with it. And it is honestly freaking delicious.
Sounds incredible.
Totally shelf stable and totally effective.
This is the greatest commercial ever for something that you don't currently make yet.
Oh my God. That sounds so
Hey,
good.
you know what? When we get off of here, I'm going to give you a call and we're going to partner up on this thing. And we're going to make this fucking thing work because I think everybody needs it.
Yeah.
That sounds so amazing.
It's been cool to see. I mean, like y'all have seen, like I've seen y'all have like the carnivore crisp, the carnivore snacks, like all these, you know, dehydrated or freeze dried meat products, which are super convenient. I mean, that is a great way to get the protein in a shelf stable manner. Combine that with the brick is a great way to get the fat in a shelf stable manner. And I mean, pretty much all your bases are covered if you're following a low carb approach. I mean, when I'm out hunting, that's what I've got. I got the freeze dried or dehydrated meat source and the brick, and I'm solid.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time. You working on any books or anything like that? Because if you're not, I think you should be.
Yeah. I've got a book in the works right now. It's all about basically doing natural bodybuilding from a ketogenic perspective.
Awesome.
I'm working on an online course that is going to be like a companion course that goes along with the book. You know, I'm super excited about natural bodybuilding adopting a ketogenic approach from like a hormonal standpoint alone. I think it makes it much more sustainable and efficient. And I mean, you're able to get freaking shredded. So I think there's a lot more people that would benefit from that dietary protocol. So I'm excited to just put more content out around it.
Where can people find it and where can they get some Keto Bricks?
Well, that's not live yet, but it will be on ketosavage.com and the bricks are at ketobrick.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all. Always a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Damn, we got another public service announcement on keto. Freaking fantastic.
Dang.
Ribeye Brick.
That Ribeye Brick is still on my mind right now.
Sounds so good.
Because
Bacon
initially,
grease?
initially I was thinking it was just a brick that tasted like ribeye, not that there was actual desiccated ribeye together with bacon grease.
I think that people don't mind price if it's convenient and it works and it tastes good, you know? It's like, I don't know what the other bricks cost, but if another brick is $4 and this one has to be 8 or 12, I can still see people being like, because you're not going to eat that
every day.
Yeah, you're not going to eat it all the time. And plus the bricks are huge. The brick is not really, he eats a whole thing, it sounds like, at a time, but it's not really a single serving.
Yeah.
It's at least 2, right?
I usually do like half a brick, or sometimes I'll do like a third of a brick at a time, because it's a lot of calories. Like that thing, if you have the whole thing at once, I've been filled up. Like it'll fill you up. Yeah.
The last time we were in LA podcasting, like from sun up to sundown and so on and so forth. That's what we survived on.
Yeah, we were
I survived on like one keto brick for like a whole weekend. Like
Keto Bricks and Kratom.
Pretty much, yeah. Keto Bricks and Kratom.
and 10-minute walks that lasted 18 hours.
Yeah, because we got lost.
Fuck, those were terrible.
And we were sprinting down the street because it's Gold Green.
That's right. Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, we were doing random sprints.
The side effects of doing these podcasts, if people only knew, the different shit that we're trying. We got these fucking voices in our head all day long. And we're like, oh yeah, I should try that. I should mess with this. And you're like, oh my God, I'm doing way too many different things at one time. I'm going to keel over it any moment.
But shoot, there's so many things. A lot of things end up working really well. I've been eating close to bed and I've been feeling pretty good with that. Yeah,
that's good.
Nice. I'm just like, because, and this is just the way the podcast universe works. You don't hear too many people praising keto for bodybuilding, but then yesterday on Clubhouse, we had Flex Wheeler talking about how he was low carb. Like,
just eating meat mainly and crystal light. Yeah,
he said he just totally got rid of carbs, right? Or was he low carb?
Yeah, he said zero.
He said zero carbs.
And then when he really wanted to get, he said lit up or something like that, he would have like 1 or 2 cups of oatmeal, and that was it. Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously, genetics is going to play a huge role in that,
obviously.
But I mean, you hear it all the time. Like, no, if you want to be a bodybuilder, you have to have carbs. It's like, here's 2 dudes, obviously.
Yeah.
I would think one thing to examine is, if you're smaller framed, I mean, it sounds like Robert was smaller framed at a point. You mentioned being on stage at 159 pounds. If you're a smaller framed guy, you might need to go the complex carbs route with the moderate fat amounts and kind of higher protein. Like, that might be a route that you need to go. But I think that once you start to acquire and obtain that muscle, you can probably change your diet a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something that helps you with your hormones. Maybe you find it more convenient. I do think a lot of times these things are things that are going to have to feel good to you and work for you. But I don't mean like really work for your body necessarily. I mean, just they kind of go along with your belief system. Because I know some people are like, man, I can't do anything without carbs. It's like, there's no reason to really change that person. Maybe you offer some advice and say, hey, just cut back on about 50 or 100 carbs and see how that feels. Because I bet you that most likely you probably don't need 400 grams of carbs, but maybe that particular person does. Maybe, I would say, like, if it's someone who's more of an ectomorph, or somebody that's been fairly thin their whole life, maybe they're able to figure that out. Yeah. Maybe they're able to eat that amount of carbohydrate and be totally fine and feel great during their workouts.
Yeah. But, I totally agree with him as far as the fat amount is concerned when it comes to prepping and getting really, really lean and having to take your calories low. Because, I mean, everyone you see that's like, oh, okay, I have to take my fats to 30 grams, 25 grams. They all feel horrible. Like, you're going to feel horrible, but you feel really bad there, because that amount of fat for men and women is just not that'll tank everything. So it's really cool. It's really awesome that he did his blood work to see what would happen, doing a more moderate to high fat approach while cutting, and then doing the lower fat approach. It's less of a hit.
Yeah. Without fat, you die. I mean, if you don't have fat in your diet, there's a lot of weird stuff you can do. I'm in the middle of this, or I'm at the end of this 5-day fast. Today's the last day. Hooray. Get to eat tomorrow. But there's a lot of things you can do that are really funky and really weird to kind of trick the system, but you're not going to last very long without fat. You need fat. And then for your hormonal profile, I mean, it's huge. A lot of what he said, I really liked, because, and he was talking about these different communities, kind of all having the same purpose, like even vegan, vegetarian, carnivores, keto people, flexible people, all these different people, they really, I think most of the time, are putting out information to show what they've been able to do. They're excited about what they're doing, and sometimes they step on other people's toes. Sometimes they go way out of their way to bash somebody else, and none of that's great. But I think for the most part, they're trying to just share their experience so other people do it. And then what is it almost always for? I mean, occasionally it's for bulking, but it's almost always for people to lose weight and to share information with people on, hey, this could be probably a lot easier than you ever possibly thought, because I know at the moment that you're probably a lot heavier than you want to be, and there's some changes that I made that I felt were very simple, and I'm not heavy anymore. And I bet that you can do it too, because I don't feel like I was anybody special to be able to make some of these changes, because they really weren't that, they don't feel that bad. They feel like they're not interrupting my life. They actually feel like they're improving my life.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting though too is he mentioned his 5.5 like 5.5 day fast, and that I wonder what he was eating, or if he was doing something you were like you, because he said he was just having electrolytes and he was hitting PRs through that whole thing.
Oh yeah.
So like
it's wild.
That's really crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, he may have been literally just fasting. I know some people have done stuff like that. And you can survive off of that for a bit. I mean, you know, 5 days seems like a long time, but you can run off your own body fat for a while.
I also think though, like maybe he had a bit more body fat at that time, because you're pretty damn lean right now.
Right.
So like, and like right now, have you worked out these past few days?
I have. I worked out every day. Yesterday was like a really, really light, just like 20 minutes something or other, because I just didn't really feel like it. But I'm like, I still want to be able to say I worked out every day. So I did a little something, did a little shoulders and biceps and stuff. I'll do something today, and then tomorrow I'll lift, and then I'll eat. That'll be the first meal. I mean, more officially, I could eat tonight at like 7, but I don't want to disrupt my sleep.
Yeah,
my sleep's been going good. I had another good night of sleep, and I don't want to mess with that, so I'll just wait till tomorrow after I train.
So do you think you'll, like, from now on, just have your last meal be much earlier than it used to be?
I'm going to work on it. Yeah. I'm going to work on it. You know, so it doesn't always work out that way for me. Like, just, you know, from a standpoint of like, you know, family stuff, you know, it doesn't always work out that way. And I don't, you know, I think that it will work out fine. Like if I just do it most of the time, I think that it will reset everything, and I think that it won't matter as much. I won't be as sensitive to it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Time will tell. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to head in the right direction.
Yeah, I have noticed that because I will like to have a like a super big protein shake to end my day. Like it just, if I'm hungry, like that, I'm not able to breathe after that, so I'm not hungry anymore. But I've noticed 2 times this week that I had the shake a little bit later than I would like to. I have sweat through a shirt completely in the middle of the night, and it is on those nights. Could be coincidence, but
Time for a chili pad.
Oh, dude, that would be amazing.
So some of my understanding of some of this is when you don't sleep well, you build up a lot of adenosine, and I think that causes more problems down the road. So I think that once you start to recalibrate, I think you start to bring that hormone down. And once you start to bring that hormone down, then everything else gets to be easier from there. But so your question about, you know, am I going to try to do this all, you know, kind of all the time, every night? I don't think it will matter. I think as long as I, you know, bring down, as long as I kind of, I guess, unwind some of this maybe damage that I've done, I think I'll be back to, you know, whatever normal is. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It's going to be interesting. You might turn into a different person, man.
I might turn into a werewolf. You never know.
Grow the beard again?
Yeah, it's coming in. It's coming in. All right, Andrew, take us on out of here, buddy.
I would love to. Thank you. Did you make it? You missed it.
Couldn't have been further off.
Multiple episodes where you had just not made it.
No, it's not even
It's because of the
close.
fast.
Yeah,
that's because of the fast. So what was the last one? What was the last
and
one?
it's super windy in Sacramento.
That's true.
My allergies are just killing
That
me.
light over there is pretty bright.
True.
Yeah, it is. I know. Like, anyway, thank you everybody for checking out today's podcast. Please make sure you follow the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, because that is going to be awesome. A fasting video and write up from Nsima. Don't miss out on that. My Instagram, not TikTok, Instagram, Clubhouse, Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where are you at?
I don't use TikTok, but I have one. Instagram, YouTube, Clubhouse, TikTok at Nsima Inyang, Twitter at Nsima Inyang.
What was that other one that we messed with for a little bit? It was like 15-second videos. Shit.
That was Instagram in the beginning, remember?
It was.
Yeah, it was Instagram in the beginning.
Not Vine, but it was like more recent.
Really? Vero?
I remember Vero.
There was a Vero, but there was something else. I don't remember what it was called.
We tried. It died. Sorry.
Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.